So kia ora everybody. This is a really exciting session because I am talking with Rachel Murtagh, who is going to show us an absolute gem of a bit of software for anybody who's interested in doing three-dimensional visualizations of geological, imaginary geological blocks of the Earth's crust, or even to construct a real version of a 3D model of some layers in the Earth's crust with various features such as faults and folds. This video will be absolutely perfect for anybody who's interested in geology and who loves the idea of getting good at visualizing what's under the ground in 3 dimensions. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask Rachel to take us through it in several steps, so that if you are new to this world, perhaps you're a school student or a teacher at school, you can do some of the basic functionalities, which will give you plenty to work with. And then we'll do a couple of segments where, Rachel, I'll ask you to take us into a little bit more detail to show us the full range of things we can do with this software. I'm super excited. I'm going to hand it over to you. And so take us through it. Tell us what it's about, what it is, and take us on the journey.
Okie dokie. So I'll share my screen and we can get going. So this is Visible Geology. It's running on a web browser, so really accessible, really easy to share a link and get going on this. This homepage, we're still developing this, and so you expect to see a couple of changes as we're bringing in more functionality. So the main 3 buttons that you see at the moment is the Geology Explorer, and that's what we're going to start with today. And then, as Julian says, we've got some more advanced tools like the StereoNet and a little tool to kind of describe and explain all about apparent dip. And so we've got some really basic navigation prompts here, which is basically all to do with the 3D scene. So very straightforward things: rotate using the left click button, zoom with your scroll wheel, so up and down, zoom in, zoom out, and move or pan with the left click button, or the right click button, sorry. So we'll start and select the Geology Explorer. So the first thing you see is your basic block model as Julian described. And we've got 3 layers to start people off with. We've got a lot of icons down here in the bottom. And so what I'll do is I'll start clicking on the first icon to show you how to manipulate and add and remove geologic beds as the first kind of step of building up your lithology, or your imaginary lithology. So you've got like a purple green and a light green. To add more layers, you can basically just click the plus button. That goes as much as you want it to. You can reorder or rejig the position of those by clicking this up and down button here, and you see the effect of those on the block model instantaneously. You can change the colors. We've got some standard colors that are kind of, like a sandstone, a mudstone, etc. You can change the height manually here by typing something in, but you can also change the height of individual beds in the scene as well. And the other really neat thing you can do is you can click and drag to reorder where those layers occur. And then obviously as well, you can delete. So if you wanted to revert back to the original, you've got a little revert button back, a little revert icon down here in the bottom right-hand side under the geologic beds. And when you're happy with your layers, you've got an apply button down here as well. So I'm going to click the apply button, and you can basically see those changes have been applied to the model. So that's the first basic step of creating your model, and you can zoom in, zoom out, rotate it around, have a look, up, down, whatever you like, just by using your mouse. So the next thing that you can do is the next icon over is a new event. So when we click on the new event icon, we get this list, and we can scroll down through the list to see more options at the bottom. So don't forget to scroll down and have a look at them down there. So the first one we have is a fault. We go through tilt, folding, bend fault, non-conformity, domes and basins, blind thrust fault, a dike, and a pluton. So today I'm just going to show you guys a handful of these. And then obviously feel free to jump in and have a look at these, the rest of them in your own time. So I'll click on the fault. That automatically puts in some of these handles in the scene. When I hover my mouse over the handle, so I'm hovering over the green up-down handle at the moment, you sort of see that it gets a bit brighter, and that shows you that you can actually use that to affect the fault. So this is indicating how high the fault should sit. So up high, and you can kind of see the effect there through the transparent plane of the dark blue layer being offset, and maybe the green-gray is easier to see it there. And I can use this orangey handle to affect the throw, the intensity of the fault, or the amount of throw that's happening. So the fault block on the right-hand side of the screen is moving down or up. So if I kind of happy enough with that there, we can see that's the effect of the fault that we've just put in. We've got two editors. One manipulates the position, like you've just seen me move up and down there. And the other one manipulates the fault plane itself. So say, for example, if I was looking for a much more shallow fault, and with a different orientation, you can get quite advanced with these things, but you basically have to move over to the other editor, and then you get these different manipulators that come into the scene to manipulate those that orientation of the fault plane.
Sorry, can you just explain when you say the other editor, do you mean the on the top there?
These two buttons here. Yeah, so these two buttons here, sorry, on the right-hand side towards the bottom, they appear over the fault. So you've got the little red arrow here. If you click on that, you see the editor changes in the scene. So you get this position widget pop up. And then if you're looking to change the orientation of the plane, you click on this kind of more, I don't know how to describe it, the red and green loopy ones, the icon over here, and that gives you the ability to change those handles in the scene there. So once again, if you're kind of happy enough with what you have in your model, you can come down here to the bottom right hand corner and click the apply, and there you have your fault has been added to your model, and you can see the offset, and you can spin it around and see how it's affected at the top. Obviously, we have no surface expression with this particular fault at the top of the model, but we certainly see it down through the side of the block. So I'll choose a couple of others. The fold event is quite a fun one to show. So again, we've got the two editing modes that come up above. It just pops up here down at the right-hand side, bottom right. And we've got the orientation of the fold plane. So again, if I wanted that fold to kind of go a bit of a different orientation, I can click and drag the green arrow. And you can kind of see how the deformation will be affecting the layers by that dappling effect on the layers. And if I want to change the phase of the or the height or intensity of the fold, I choose this other editor over here. So again, bottom right-hand side with the little icon of the fold with the blue. Click on that one and you can see you've got some different widget handles popped into the scene. So we've got these little piston icons and we've got these little square icons. So if you click and drag so I'm going to use the blue one off to the left-hand side. If I click and drag that, you can see I'm stretching out the fold phase. So it's a lower frequency. If I click and drag the green one at the top of the model, you can see I'm increasing the amplitude of the fold. So it's making it quite an intense compressional fold here. And other things that I get to play with is there's a red piston down here, a pistony icon thing, and that shows that I can actually sort of focus the, say, for example, if you were wanting to build a kind of an anticlinal fold in the center of your, have that as the focus, you can make sure that that anticline kind of occurs right in the center, or you can shift the phase over and you can kind of get more of the syncline in the center of your model. And then the final control is the yellow one, and that controls the shape of the fold. So as I move this icon up, you can see it's a flat structured fold, so very flat on top. And if I move it down, I get a very intense kind of chevron fold. So again, just depending on what you have in your mind in terms of like what concept you want to convey, you can use all these manipulators to really build what you have in your head. So again, once I'm happy enough with, how much I've played around with this, I go down to the bottom right-hand corner and I click the apply button, and then that event has been sort of saved and stamped onto your model. So I'm going to jump down and I'm going to go and show you the Dyke, because I think this is a really cool one to show as well. So again, I click on the Dyke and I get some handles, some options come into the scene. And again, I've got this idea of I can control the location of the Dyke with this cross icon down here in the right. And I can control the orientation of the Dyke, which is really important. Obviously, not all dikes are vertical and smack bang right in the middle of your fold. So it's really important that you can manipulate both of those things so that it suits the concept and the model that you're trying to build. So say, for example, I wanted to put a slight dip on this fold. I'm over here in the orientation editor. I get my green, red and blue arrows to be able to slightly dip that fold off to the east. So it's dipping off to the east with north pointing down towards me. And say, for example, I wanted to orientate it a little bit so that the plane of the Dyke is actually facing a little bit northeast as well. I click on the green arrow off on the left here, and I drag it across the screen, and it changes the orientation there. Say, for example, I wanted it further over, position-wise, I wanted the Dyke further over to the east. I select the location editor on the right-hand side to this red cross, and then I come into the scene. I look for the highlighted prompt. So I have on the right, so I'm clicking on the right thing here, and I just basically click and drag it. So now that Dyke is very much off to the east of my model. And the one other aspect of the Dyke I can change is the thickness. So you can see when I'm kind of moving it through this view here, you can see that there is an actual thickness to this. And if I use the blue handle up at the top of the scene up here, I can click on that blue one and I can make this Dyke a really thick Dyke, or I can make it a really thin Dyke. And so again, according to my, the concept that I want to get across, or the type of model that I want to build, I might be thinking of this as a very thin vein or something like that. And so I might want to make it quite thin. So again, once I'm happy with that, I come down to the bottom right-hand side and I click apply, and it gets stamped and saved onto the model. So the next thing that I might jump through to, there's all these events, so plenty to play around with. But the next thing I might jump into, for just cognizant of time, is the idea of the history or the chronology. So the third icon over at the bottom right-hand side looks like a little bit of a clock with an hour around it. If I click on that, I get this history panel pop up on the right-hand side, and I can see that it's essentially giving me a record of all of the things I have done to this model so far. And you can see that all of them are highlighted green at the moment. And if I click back through the history, so if I select the folding, you can see it's now come back a step. It's removed the Dyke from the model, and it's now showing me beds, fault, and folding. And I can keep going. I can keep coming back in time and only, you know, to basically peel back the history of this model, which is really cool because it kind of, you can sort of go through the evolution of your model and really kind of trace back how these things have affected, say, for example, the surface expression, what's going on up here. But the other super cool thing that I can do is I can query this history and I can start exploring questions such as what happened, what would this model look like if the dike happened really early on, maybe even before the fault. So now I can click and drag that dike step and bring it right down early in the history. So I can see that first I did the beds, then came the dike, then came a fault. So we can see that really, really nicely in the model. We can see exactly what's happened to that dike when it got faulted. And then the entire space was then folded. So we can see some really crazy things happening to the dike now. It's actually thickened along that fold surface. So some really interesting investigations that you can do. We even see the thickening kind of occur at that surface level because of the intensity of the folding. So some really cool things that you can play around with and investigate using this history panel. You can also obviously do things like completely remove by an event by clicking delete. You can go back in and edit the event as well by clicking the edit icon. So I'll just go back in there and show you the bin at the top is the delete. The edit here with the little pencil, that's the edit. So you can go in and edit the event. And you've got the option to also copy the event. So say, for example, you had 2 stages of folding, which would, you basically click the copy and select that. And now you can see it's really had a big crazy effect on the geology. So I'll go and I'll delete that second phase of folding again because it's all a bit much. So there you go, back to our original. So that's really, really powerful, I think, and it's one of the things that we that we really hope people are going to be excited to use. So moving on from that one, the next, just basically moving through these icons, the next one you kind of see here down at the bottom right-hand corner looks like a topographic contour map, basically, and that's because it is the topography. So this option, when you click on it, pops up your topography panel, and we get some options here. We get a custom field, which I'll come back to in a sec, but we get these made or predetermined types of topographies. So we've got a cliff. So you basically just select the one that you want to apply to your model. And it immediately applies it, and it puts in some topographic contour lines. So it gives you a little bit of an imaginary elevation. And so you can, again, the important thing here is that you can see the surface expression of the geology change according to what topography you might be dealing with. So we've got a little bit of a labeling issue here with the mountain and the hill, but so just look past that for the time being. So when I click on the mountain, you can see that's what my potential mapped area would look like if I was able to map all the exposure in that space. I'll take off the topography just for a little while. So we can see the effect of the fault. The fault is actually has a surface expression there, and it's actually offset between the green and the grey there, which is pretty cool to see. If I select a hill, we can see it looks very, very different. So and we see the dike is now exposed and again offset by that fold. So it's a really interesting little exercise to go through and understand that the geology isn't changing, the erosion surface or the topography is changing. And that can really, really, you know, sort of be a good concept for people to get their heads around, because it's not entirely, I'll just put it north up. So it's not entirely the most intuitive thing, you know, to kind of get your head around when you're looking at these things in real life.
I think it's one of the hardest things for that people learn in geology, is to actually see something on a surface that itself is not regular. It's not just flat, it's a kind of bumpy surface, and then try to visualize the three-dimensional structure that, that creates that layout.
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So the last kind of pre-made one we have here, and I've probably not built, you know, this model very well to showcase this one, is a valley. And this one is super cool. You know, you can when you build your model better than I have here now today, but you can really get your head around the rule of the V's really easily using this tool with the valley as your topography. You can very easily sort of dip the folding, so you can have plunging folding, and you can really get a sense of how the rule of the V's indicates the plunge of the fold and things like that. You know, concepts that we're always trying to teach and are very difficult to teach conceptually without some visuals to help. So I sort of hinted at the custom topography up here. So I'll jump back up there and show you this, because this is a really fun tool. So we have these 5 options, obviously, but you might have some idea about, actually, I'd love to see what this geology looks like if you had some really, you know, pronounced mountains on one side and a really deep valley, or some like really a U-shaped kind of glacial erosion surface or something like that in there. So we actually have the option to click on that custom topography. And what the first step of this is, you'll see terrain dimensions is what you see down here in the bottom right-hand corner. And in the scene, you've got a sort of a template, almost a little bit of a precursor to what your model extents will be. And we've got the green, red, and blue blocks in this visual here. And I'll just zoom in a little bit to make that easier to see with my mouse. So again, you can see when I hover over the green handle or the red handle here off to the left, or the blue off to the right, you can see it kind of changes in its shading a wee bit. And that tells you that you can actually manipulate that. So I click and drag, and I'm extending my model extents now in that direction of the blue one. So we can see it's off to the north in here in this orientation. And I'll click and drag the red one, and I'll actually just make the green one a little bit flatter. So what I'm imagining here now is kind of almost like I'm building a regional scale model. So quite aerially extensive in the green and in the red and the blue, but a little bit flatter in the Z direction, or in the elevation direction. And when you're happy enough with your extents, you click apply down at the bottom right-hand corner. And now you see we've got some more terrain editing capabilities pop up here on the right-hand side. So we've got some icons over here that kind of prompt us as to what this tool might be for. We can see that we can raise up the elevation. We can lower the elevation. So think mountains when we're raising them up, and think valleys or river systems or something like that when we're lowering them down. We've got the capability to flatten off the tops, and we've got an option to smooth out the tops as well. And then we've got these 2 sliding scales that you can kind of click to increase or decrease. So this first one, you can see, you might be able to notice in the background, the radius is increasing and decreasing. So when I ramp it up, there's a big circle, and when I ramp it down, there's a small circle. So that's basically the area that I will affect when I click on the model. And then the next scale is like an intensity. So if I have it scaled right up here, if I click right up here, that's going to be like a highly intensive mountain building event. Or if I click down, it's going to be a less intense mode of mountain building. So I'm in the raise option here, and I've got this size radius here, and I'll just click up the intensity a wee bit so that we kind of see the effect of it straight away. I come on to my model in the scene, and I'll just start at the back corner back there at the top of the screen, and I click and I drag. And you can kind of see that you can create a little snaking mountain building all the way, and I'm just literally just doing something completely random. The more I stay on a spot, the higher it comes up. So the bigger the mountain, for example. If you want to rotate your model, just come out of, bring your mouse away from the model, and you can click and drag and it'll rotate your model around. So you can kind of, reorientate yourself, etc., etc. So
when you're making your mountain, are you right clicking with that to
yes,
as you go? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So sorry, no, left clicking. Sorry. So just your normal mouse click motion, you know, as if you were selecting something. Okay. Yeah. So your left mouse click. And then, yeah, so you click and drag to kind of have like that smooth one. And then if you want to, like, say if I wanted to create a massive peak back here, I would just keep my finger on the click button and not move. And then that just keeps building it up and up. So say, for example, then I wanted to create some lower, you know, say, for example, there was like a river coming down here and I wanted kind of like cut down through this space here in the front of, at the bottom of the screen or the front of the model, I would select the lower. And then again, I might make my radius even smaller. Well, that's quite small. Maybe make it a bit bigger than that. And I'll put it quite far up in intensity so that we get a real good like digging down. Way, there we go. So you can see it's just absolutely chomping through the terrain there. See that? Yeah. So that's a real big trench there. So if I wanted to smooth these things out, I'll put less intensity smoothing on it. And again, just decrease that. And I can just smooth that trench or that valley, whatever your interpretation of this topography is. I just click and drag. So my finger is on the left-hand mouse click, and I'm just holding my finger down and moving across the topography to smooth it out. So it just smooths out those kind of more jaggedy edges and blends the high points into the low points. So it's not quite as, you know, it's not quite as intense or triangulated. It just introduces a little smoothness. And say, for example, I had something like, I don't know, a table mountain or something like that in my head for this peak at the back here. I can click the flatten option and I just basically come over to the high point and I click and I can click and hold, or I can click as much as I want, and then that flattens out the top of the mountain. If I wanted to flatten this right back down to, say, a 0 elevation, the same as the rest of the model, I essentially can just click, oh sorry, actually it'll just build out, it'll kind of keep building out and continue flattening across. So it's kind of linked that peak up around with the other space. If I wanted to flatten it down, I need to start from a flat point and then bring it across. See there? So I started from the flat and then I brought it across. So it actually kind of takes, so if I start at this flat point here and I click and drag, it flattens, it brings the flattening down. So it's almost like a blurring or a blending as I push back into the topography. So so you can have heaps of fun playing in here and exploring how, you know, you can kind of create different topographies. You might have a topography in your head about somewhere you know and love going hiking or tramping, and you want to recreate it. So on and so forth. So you can do, you know, you can really have a lot of fun in here building sort of imaginary things. Yeah, and it's really cool. So when you're happy, when you've sort of created your make-believe topography and you're happy with it, you come down here to the bottom right-hand side and you click save. You can rename it if you like in here, in this field here. I'm just going to leave it my topography, and you click save and return. And what that does is it takes your topography and it actually applies it to the geological model that you built. And this is looking pretty crazy. But you can see that we've got the fold phases coming through. We've got the dike that's been faulted. And, you know, we've got all of the geology that I had created before, but we've got it applied to our new model extents and topography. And you can just investigate this now from here on in, or you can go back and say, oh, that's all a bit crazy. I might actually come back into the history. And you know what? I might just get rid of the fold event, and I might just have, oh, sorry, the faulting event, and I might just have the dike and the folding, and that's just going to make it a little bit more palatable to kind of understand what's going on. So you've got your folded geology coming right through, nice and consistently through the region, and then your dike cutting right through all of that terrain. So the next So after the topography, the next thing you can do, the next icon we have in the bottom right-hand corner down here is the cross-section. So again, I click on the icon down here and we get cross-section panel appear to the right, and I get this option to create new. So I click on the new button and I can see there's a little bit of a rendering bug there now, so excuse me there, I'll just tweak that so that you can see what's after happening. So two widgets or handles are popped into the scene. So we've got one, if I look down on the model and I zoom out a bit, I can see a red crosshairs up at the top of the screen, and a red crosshair icon down at the bottom left of the screen. And again, if I tilt it back up, what you can see is that's corresponding to, you know, your kind of A dash type cross section. And what I can do is, if I'm off on the left-hand side of the screen here now, I can click and select the red crosshairs, and I can say, place that, say, over towards the dike there, so that I have the cross section going from one side, closest to the dike, over to the far right-hand corner. Or I can say, actually, I just want the cross section to go right across, kind of straight down along the northern boundary there, and that's what I want to look at. So again, if I'm looking down at the model, I can see where the crosshairs are located, there and there, and then that's what that is the cross section. It's a slice that's taken out of the model and rendered above your model as a cross section. So once you're happy with that, and that's all looking cool, you kind of see the thickening of the dike as it goes through the fold. Once you're happy with that, you can rename your cross section, but yep, you can save it by clicking the apply button down at the bottom right-hand corner. Now, once you have a cross section in the scene, you can always go back and say, for example, I actually wanted to add another event in here, maybe something like a non-conformity coming through here. So I get some options to say, what is the lithology of the non-conformity? So yeah, a red and a grey, hypothetically. So I'm just going to say, yeah, the non-conformity comes in and deposits down a red and grey layers, and you click apply. And oh, sorry, I might just edit that one because it's hanging above the model a wee bit. There we go. Sorry, my apologies. I didn't quite get it low enough. So you can say, okay, I want that non-conformity coming in and affecting, and you can see it's actually automatically comes into the model itself, and it comes into the cross section. So if I click apply to that non-conformity, just close that panel there and zoom out a wee bit, so we can see all of the top layers now, all the mountainous layers are actually populated now by the layers of deposited after the erosion event of the non-conformity, and the cross section also gets updated live in the scene as well. And you can make all those changes as before, you know, with the history, you know, you're clicking and dragging and everything will be automatically updated in the cross section and in your model. So say, for example, if the folding came before the dike, there we go, we just see it automatically update. So if you keep an eye on the left-hand side of the screen and the dike there, you see the dike is cross-cutting the folding, but if the dike comes before the folding, there you go, you see it being affected in a different way in the cross section. So it's pretty cool. Everything just automatically gets updated live in the scene when you have it added to the scene. It's very cool. And so the next kind of model interrogation tool that we have is called core sample. So again, if we're down here again in the right hand side, and the next icon over is this little, you can kind of see this little core sample being drilled down into the model. You click on that and it's very similar to the cross section tool. You click the new and you get some options here which look like the event handles. So we have the red arching arrow at the top that will control the dip of your hypothetical core sample that you're drilling into your model. And we have the green arrow down here on kind of to the right-hand side that will affect the compass bearing or the direction or orientation of your core model, your core sample as you drill down into your into the model, into the geology, and you get the crosshairs again to actually locate the core sample. So say if we put it on the high point over here, we can kind of see it updating dynamically and live in the scene. So hovering it and setting it there, we're going to get a bit of the non-conformity at the top, the red and the gray, and then we're into our blue strata down here. If I click and drag to make the core sample dip, then you can see the layers actually dip in, or so you can see the contact surfaces are actually updated so that it kind of shows it that the contact surface is at an angle, as if, and that's basically what you would see if you were drilling down through geology like this. And then again, if I orientated the core sample so that it's kind of at an angle and it might go through some more of the folded beds, you can start seeing some of those green layers coming into the bottom of your core sample as I move the orientation of the core through that section where it's going through the fold. So again, if I bring it to this view, you might be able to kind of get a sense of why it's picking up the last little bit of green there as I go through. So that's pretty cool. You can kind of really get a sense of what's happening there. Really nice. So again, once you're happy with that, you click apply and it adds it into your scene. And there you go. Now you have your cross section and a core sample in your scene. And same as before, any updates that you make to your geology or your deformation or your history will automatically and dynamically get updated in the scene as well. So it's super cool.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
So it looks to me like there's infinite possibilities just to get used to what geology looks like with different topographies, and to be able to mess with the sequence of the history and see the impact of that on everything, you know, that you actually see in the model is an incredible way of educating yourself on the possibilities, so that one day when you go out in the field, you start to have the sort of three-dimensional mind that can understand what you're seeing. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's really quite exciting at the things that you can potentially build in this. And I think we're going to see some really nice archetypal deposits that people might be generating in here, you know. So say like your classic angular non-conformities, your classic sort of plunging folds with the rule to show the rule of the V's and things like that. You know, they're going to be really nice models to be able to build fairly quickly in here as well. So it's
and really, so can you save your model?
So at the moment, in this build that I'm using, this is a sort of a preview version. So we're in what's called a beta phase, which means that we've got a good chunk of the functionality in, but not all of the functionality that we will have on the final release. So at the moment, no, I can't save this. So if I were to lose my internet connection, if I were to shut down my internet window or anything like that, or reload or anything, I would lose what I've done here now. But the final version will have save and share and embed functionality, so that you can really sort of get the absolute most out of your models. So for example, if you are an educator and you are wanting to build these things in advance of a class or something like that, you will have those capabilities in the final version early next year.
Okay. Great. So that for now, you can still do a screen grab to make an image of your model and then save those up. That's really great.
Along with the save and share and embed, there's so much more functionality and workflow that is yet to come, and a lot that I haven't even shown you today. So I'd really love for us to do a part 2, and I can show you things like taking structural measurements from a model and bringing them into the StereoNet tool. I think that would be a really lovely thing to show your viewers.
Great. So that's fantastic, Rachel. So what we'll do for part 1 now is we'll stop here. everybody, I would love your comments below. Do you find this model fascinating? For me, it's a geologist's dream to be able to do, and it's absolutely free. The link is below. Open it up, have a play. And if you're a teacher, just imagine what you can now demonstrate to your students about geology. And anyone who just enjoys the idea of playing it almost like a game, just to create puzzles for yourself and to see what the impact is of various features of the different topographies. Fantastic. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Rachel's coming up soon.
Yep.
Please, everybody, make a comment, make a like. This is beautiful stuff. It's all for you. It's all for nothing. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Julian.
Great.